capture your attention, and please feel free to jump in. This is an interactive session here. My name is Christy Hooper. I'm a licensed clinical mental health counselor supervisor. The S just became on my name last year. So that means that I do clinical supervision for individuals such as yourself. I have been in this field since 2008. So I'm gonna take you on a journey a little bit about how I got here. I started, my undergrad was actually in English and political science. My dream was to become a lawyer, where I'm at now. So I always knew I wanted to help people, I just didn't know how. And that aspect didn't work for me. And so I was getting ready to graduate from Winston-Salem State, Ram Pride, and I needed a job. And this wonderful young lady who you see, who is my older sister, she gave me a job. She was in mental health, didn't know anything about it, that it existed, the different aspects of it. And thanks to her, she opened up the door for me to discover where I'm at today. So I started working in a group home. Some of you might be familiar with that. I worked in the girls and boys group home, and that was just trying to figure out, I just needed some money. And then I was like, okay, so what am I gonna do? I'm not gonna be a lawyer, so now what? So I said, I'm gonna go try to get my master's. I just need to figure out what. I know I wanna help people, so I was like, why not become a social worker? So as I was on the phone with the guidance person, the career counselor, trying to figure out what we're gonna do, she was like, hey, she asked me about my interests. Now that's one thing I will say, if you're not sure about what area you wanna go in, career counselors, there's some good ones out there. And this lady really was invested in trying to help me figure out and navigate where I needed to be, what I wanted to do. So she was talking to me, she said, have you ever thought about being a counselor? I hear you say you want to be a social worker, but I think you might want to look into counseling. So I don't think I knew about counseling. I don't want to be a school counselor. I was like, no, I don't want to do that. She was like, no, there's some different aspects to counseling. I want to introduce you to someone. So she put me in contact with one of the professors at the school who was a mental health counselor. And she talked to me and I was like, hey, this sounds interesting. So that's what I did. I went and started taking classes. I did online because remember I was working full time and I needed to make sure I was able to pay my bills. So I ended up going to Capella University. Wonderful, wonderful program. I love it. I can say it was very strenuous, and the fact that I like how you have two, is it residencies I believe we did, where you go for a whole week and all you're doing from 8 a.m. to 5 p.m. is counseling practice. So you're role playing between being a client and a therapist, and that's all we did all day. And so you're practicing different theories, how to do different things, building rapport, making sure clarity, the questions. It was very intense, and they tell you when you come here, you might not see some of the people in your 5 days that you're here. Some people we're gonna say, this probably isn't for you. You might wanna try a different career. Like, they were serious about it up front, because if you haven't done the work within yourself, and that's something else that you want to take note of, one of the good things I liked about it is they told us to go get a therapist so that we can see how that feels. Because it's a lot of things that we might be harboring, or some things that we haven't overcome yet, and you don't want to have that transference when you're dealing with different clients. And so that's one aspect that they share with us. So I did Capella. That took 2 to 3 years for that to get my master's, and then I became, my master's is in mental health counseling. So after you get your master's, if you're a counselor, you have to pass the state exam. It is NCC, if I'm not mistaken. I think for social workers, there's a different route to take, but for counselors, you have to pass the exam first. So we have to pass that first, and then you do your hours. I think it's 3,000 hours we have to get post-graduation to get fully licensed. So you can become an associate during that time, but to get fully licensed, you have to complete the hours. And so yes, we have to do, what's it called? Internships. I believe I had to do 2, if I'm not mistaken, 2 internships, and that's how I met the wonderful Holly back there at Intervision. I think I was the intern first, and then I got hired, and then Holly came on as an intern. I can say I love, when it comes to mental health counseling, what we do is we're dealing with emotional, behavioral, and mental aspects of things. So we can have just individual counseling, family counseling, group counseling. We diagnose. Only thing we don't do is prescribe medication. And so we can work in all settings. We're in hospitals, private practice, community. Right now, one of my jobs, I work in community mental health. So that means that, I don't know if some of you ever heard of community support services. So I'm the team lead for that. So on that team is the therapist myself, a substance abuse specialist, a peer support, and a qualified professional. So what we do is bring all the resources to the client in their home or in their community, their environment. Some people don't have the option of going out to get help or seeking private practice or have the funds to do so. And so with community mental health, a lot of times that's paid for Medicaid, but our company also has, for people uninsured, there's amount of hours that they can get the support and help that they need. So what we do is help people with their mental health, their financial situation, housing might be some, and getting linked to different things like maybe a psychiatrist or a dentist, stuff that you and I would take for granted because we just know to go out and do it. But you have a lot of people who don't know exactly how to be productive members of society, especially when you're dealing with severe and persistent mental illness. Let's say somebody who has schizophrenia, you know, their struggles, schizoaffective disorder, they might not be able to just go out and do random tasks like you and I. People don't know how to structure their lives and have daily routines, and so that's what we're here for. I also have my own practice, H3 Consulting, and what I do is share the aspect of what we do to people out in the community. So when people, there's a stigma when it comes to mental health, right? It's frowned upon sometimes. People think, oh, I'm crazy, I don't really need that, or I'm just scared to ask for help. And so what we do is foster an atmosphere where it's a comfortable place where we can have conversations about what mental health looks like. What is wellness? And we try to change the language we use to. Let's talk about just being whole, well. This field you can make, I could say, when starting out it's gonna be low salary. You can, as you working your way up and continue your education, you can work to the salary that you want to have. I can say for community mental health and CST, if you are licensed, you can get up to 6 figures in that field. For private practice, of course, you know, as long as you are trying to build your clientele up, and I like how you talked about the business aspect of things. The one thing that's hard when you're dealing with people with mental health is get consistency, right? Getting them to come in and buy into what you're doing. And so making sure that you're coming up with a plan of how to engage and check in, but not being overbearing, because we know if it's too much, they'll be like, you're doing too much, I don't need this, I don't need this service. As far as being a counselor, a therapist, I don't really see the difference in the other aspects of being a social worker. The only thing would be with the psychiatrist and those things, the medication. But other than that, we all use the DSM-5. We diagnose. You can do therapy, have your own private practice, all of those things. But just under our umbrella, there's many aspects of where you can work and what you can do. Yeah.
That's been one of their major questions. They're trying to determine their steps for grad school, which program to pick, and a great question about how do you all have different degrees and you end up
in the same
place. And we're like, don't worry too much about it,
right?
Because you can figure it out when you get finished.
I would say when you're talking about social work, it's a lot broader. There's a lot of aspects and things you can do with a social work degree. That's if you choose to do that. When it comes to just being a licensed clinical counselor, all we're doing is counseling. All we're doing is trying to figure out how to help the next person navigate their life. I'm not out here. I mean, I could find resources if I want to, but that's not really my forte. I'm just here to really talk to you about how to manage and get your life on track. But other than that, we all do the same thing. I think it's a good question too. Why do they, I don't know. You would have to ask a social worker, I guess.
Well, we had Allison Goforth came and she's an
Oh,
LCSW.
okay, I know.
So this is perfect because they heard from her.
Okay.
And now they're hearing from somebody with a different, master's and license.
Yeah.
It's good.
You guys got any questions? Go ahead.
What modality do you work through at your community?
We use several. CBT, person centered plan, solution focus, DBT, all of those aspects, especially being the lead person. And so my job is to make sure whatever we're using, my team knows how in their roles how to engage the client with that. So we're talking about CBT. We're talking about how the thought connects to the emotion and how the emotion connects to the behavior. So if we have the peer support, I'm going to say as far as the behavioral piece, some of the behaviors that the client have, this is some things that interventions you can do with the client to assist them that we're already working on in therapy, right? And so you have the substance abuse specialist, so you have duly diagnosed people as well. And so a lot of times, especially, I'm gonna be honest with you, I work with adults only, that is a big thing right now, substance abuse. I will say if a client has severe substance abuse, chances are we probably should just go ahead and link them to that type of treatment. Because if they're highly using, sitting down trying to have a conversation and get into the root of some things is not gonna be helpful. And so you wanna make sure you're providing the best treatment for that person. And sometimes that's hard for them to face. And if they're not even willing to do, like I had a person come in Monday, he inherited $5,900 because his mother passed away. So that was the first check. He's homeless. He got the check probably last week, and when he came in Monday, he had $0. So the plan before he got the money was, once the money comes, let's sit down and talk about what your housing options are. So he had already put some things in place and talked about a plan. Hadn't heard from him in about a week. And so I kept asking everybody, anybody heard from him? We need to find out what's the update so we can get started. So I finally got him into the office Monday, and that's when we found out all his money is gone. So having a conversation about, you came in, what are your goals that you wanted to work on? And you were saying how you were tired of being homeless, but your drug use is extensive. And we're not making the best decisions. So if you want to change that, what are some steps you're willing to take to do that? And how can we help you do that? First thing come out of his mouth, I'm not going to treatment. Okay? We have another big check coming because that was a small check. So if you spent that in 7 days, what are we going to do now? God is going to help me. You're right, he is a helper. But he also gives us the aspect of helping ourselves. So again, what steps are you going to take to help yourself? And right now, if you're not willing, if you're saying, I'm not ready, that's fine. But we have to be aware of the consequences. So these are conversations that you have when you're in sessions and we're talking about community mental health. So it might look different when you're doing private practice, but when it's a fast-paced setting like that, you have to get it in where you can. Because you can, one of the books on there, you can burn out. You don't want to get emotionally invested, which is something I struggle with early on, because I'm like, I don't see the progress, and I'm out here doing all of this, and the client isn't making it, and I feel like it's on me, I'm not doing a good job. And that's one thing you have to learn, is that it's not about you. You're not the driver of that vehicle, they are. We're just on the other side. You know, remember driver's ed and how they had the brake on that side? That's what we are here for. We're just here to push the brake, so make sure we don't crash and say, hey, let's talk about this. Let's look at this from a different perspective. What are our other options here? But other than that, they're driving the course of their treatment. And that's why we really bank on person-centered plan to answer your question, approach, when we're dealing with community mental health, because they're the driving force of that. And I think did you have a question?
I mean, I did, but you kind of hit in the ball field on that one. So
Okay. Yes, ma'am.
When it comes to clients that are like have a harder time with treatment, when do you know when it's no longer, when like the treatment's no longer working, and how do you go about communicating that with the...
You want to have check-ins every session anyway. And whatever the goal was when they came into treatment, we want to check in and see how are we doing working towards that. So if eventually, let's say 6 months in, because I can say for community support, we normally keep them for a year. And every month we have something called treatment team meetings. That means everybody who's providing services for that person, we all come together like how you guys are sitting here at the table, and we talk about how is the treatment going and how is the approach. Because let's say maybe the interventions we were using not effective the first 3 months. So maybe we need to come up with some different interventions. We're going to give it a good go. But after you've done so much for a certain amount of time, and you can't work, one of the most important things my professor said to me in grad school was, you don't work harder than the client, right? And so I'm not going to exhaust myself when they're over there chilling, right? So if we're sitting there in a session and you have nothing to say, then we have nothing to say because my time's still going on. But it's only going to happen for a certain amount of time, and then I'm going to say, is this really beneficial for you? Let's try a different approach. So I can say for CST, if something isn't working for a client and they're getting worse, then we have to say maybe you need a higher level of care. So that's after CST, the next higher level of care that we would look at would be a program called ACT Services. I don't know if some of you heard of that. I used to work with ACT. So ACT is really a hospital without walls. They have the psychologists, the nurses, housing specialists, the peer support, the QP, the therapist. I feel like I'm missing somebody. Is that? Employment specialist. So that's everybody that you would normally go see in different areas or places. They have it all on one team providing a service. And so they go to the home or in the community to meet the client where they are. So you have some people who the diagnosis is so severe, such as schizophrenia, that's one of them, who need injections, right? How hard is it to make sure their clients stay on medication? Very difficult.
Oh man, I was just gonna say, because I'm in the middle of taking a class about behavior and learning the symptoms, especially from the DS5, I believe it's called. I'm learning as I'm like, wow. Like, so again, it's just, when you said that, I'm like, I'm sure that's difficult to do.
It is. I remember one time, they had one client, if he didn't show up for his injections, the police would come out. Because after a certain time, I think you can go maybe a day or two, he would become a danger to himself or someone else. He could possibly hurt someone. So if he missed his injection, the psychiatrist would call the police and they would have to come get him and take him to go get his injection. So you have some people who can't manage without it because it is a danger. We have clients where we all use Google. You got an email, I'm going to put a reminder for your medication appointment so that you'll get it and we'll get it, so we know to remind you the day before, make sure you're there. So that's how we help clients manage it. And now, because we're not going to always be here, so now I'm going to show you how to put it in your phone so that it's a reminder for you. We here to train unlearn behaviors. We learn things a lot growing up in our communities, and some of that is negative. And so it takes 27, 28 days to learn a behavior, to implement one, and stick to it. And so we try to make sure we manage those type of things for those type of clients.
Now, for your clients, do your clients like typically come to you, or are they like assigned?
Both. So you have people who actually look us up and say, hey, I need help, which is wonderful, because that means they're more of a buy-in.
Mhm.
Then you have those who are court ordered, of course. That's hard. And then you have those who got linked from another provider. So you have something called an MCO, Managed Care Operator. And for us, that's Alliance. And so Alliance will sometimes refer, well, not sometimes, all the time, refer clients to us because they know what type of treatment. So if they have clients who just left, half the time they're just leaving the hospital, it was an incident. So now they have to figure out, their managed care people have to figure out what services do they need. And so knowing that Carolina Outreach, H3 Consulting, we're providers, mental health providers, we're gonna see if we can refer the clients to them to get the help that they need.
And for clients that are like ordered to go to therapy, or if they are like not wanting to go through with like treatment, do you then do you have the choice of no longer providing treatment, or do they still have to show up?
I always have a choice. They're court ordered. So whatever happens if they don't show up to treatment is on them. That's a consequence they have to deal with. But our services are voluntary. And I remind people of that all the time. I'm not gonna chase you, I'm not gonna work harder. If you don't want it, please let me know and I can refer you to someone who could possibly help you a lot better. Maybe it's just doesn't fit. Everybody's not gonna like me, I understand that. That's fine. Maybe that, and that's another thing I wanna point out. So it's a team of 4 of us on community support. Chances are you probably not gonna feel everybody. We don't push ourselves on people. So if my peer support works better, has a better rapport with the client, and then me as the team lead, I'm have to make sure I'm there to step in. I'm just gonna have them see myself in the peer support. You want to make sure you're not going to be a challenge to the client. Whereas I've had somebody say, oh, y'all, this is too much, I wasn't expecting all of this. That's fine, we can cut back. Maybe who do you feel like you mesh with better? So that way we can still get your goals achieved and you can still have support.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Anybody else? So this is, being in this field, you have to be, work on making sure that you're gonna deal with culture, diversity, all those type of things. It's gonna be different backgrounds that you come into contact with. You just have to make sure you check yourself at the door and don't take things personal, right? Because this is a world we live in where everyone's not gonna be accepting or understanding or feel like you're qualified. I remember when I first started, a guy said, how old are you? How long have you been doing this?
Yeah.
Or when I work with children in intensive in-home, mothers, do you have kids? No, I don't. But what you're doing is not working. So maybe if we look at some of the approaches I have, it might be beneficial.
Right.
One thing I want to leave you with, sometimes we're seed planters, okay? We're gonna plant the seed. Sometimes we might not be there to see it spring up and harvest, and that's fine. If I can see 10 years down the line of a client that I had before and they were struggling and I see that they were doing well, I'm gonna say, I feel like I might have had something to do with that. Right? Maybe something I said, they just kept it in their pocket, and then when they were ready, they pulled it out and used it. And that's all we are. We're tools, resources to help people get to where they need. And sometimes you might not be the tool that they need, and that's fine. You help them go in the toolbox and find another one. But I love what I do. I wouldn't change it for the world. My goal after I'm done with community mental health will be to just focus solely on H3 Consulting and do outpatient therapy with that. But I just really enjoy helping people get to where they need. And
Can you tell us what a day in the life of someone looks like in community mental health?
Okay, I'm gonna tell you from just a regular staff. So we have a caseload of 4 right now. I think we have 42 clients.
Okay.
And she said, what? Yeah.
And it's just the
4?
one team.
So we have 42 clients, and it's 4 of us, right? And so what it looks like is that I will break that. We have Alliance gives us, remember that's the MCO, they give us a certain amount of hours to have with that client. So if a client is homeless, chances are when they're coming into services, they get 420 units. That's 420 hours. So what I do is divide that up by the authorization time frame, which is if they have Medicaid, they get 3 months of services, authorized services. So if that's 420 divided by 12 weeks, and then I divide it by 4 people. So chances are it's probably gonna come to, I think, 12 or 13 hours a week for that client. So I take that 12 or 13 hours and divide it up amongst the team. So whatever the client needs that week, they have the hours to do that with the client. And so some days might be hectic. You might have 6 to 8 clients a day. What I try to do is make sure that we don't burn out. I tell the staff, rotate it. So if you have 4 that you know are a high priority, go see those 4 clients. The other 3 or 4 clients, check in with them to see if is there anything you need this week. I need to make sure another staff does something for you that I can pass the message along, because it can be a lot. But we try to manage this as best we can. They might just need some groceries. So I'm going to do a food referral. If they don't have transportation, I'm going to go pick it up and deliver it to them. Or if the food bank has transportation, they can send it to them. It can look like, which is one of the things, DSS. They can't be on the phone that long. So meeting them at DSS and trying to be there to make sure that they don't have an aggressive episode because they feel like the DSS workers there are being rude and mean to them and they're not listening. So it's just being support. So that's what we do day in and day out. At CST, we are 24/7. That means crisis calls, anything in the middle of the night, on the weekends, they know to call us. That doesn't really happen that much with the adult population because we do check in with them. And half the time, they don't even tell us when they're in a crisis. We find out after the fact. We're like, hey, remember, we're your provider. You need to call and let us know what's going on. But we just manage our schedule. And so I tell the staff, don't really do more than 8 people a day, because that's a lot. But we do have 40-something people, and we try to manage it as best we can. I will say, just every staff doesn't see all 41. Like I said before, you have some people who might only can take a peer support and a team lead, so they only see 2 people. So it's just based on what the client needs are. But we try to make sure everyone is seen by a staff member every week.
And you only work with Alliance, through Alliance?
No, I think we have partners and who the other people?
Cardinal?
No, we don't work with Cardinal.
Oh.
No, we don't work with Cardinal anymore. It's one more though. Alliance,
Do you guys understand what MCOs are and what we're talking about? We're basically just talking about the places that manage Medicare and state funding. Okay? And it can be confusing. Never.
No, I'm following. I'm
Okay.
Okay.
yeah, but we do work with other partners.
So could someone, the people on your team, like the 4 people, can they have a bachelor's degree? Do they all need master's degrees? What would an LCMHC do on that team?
Great question. So if you are, if you have license, you'll probably be the team lead or another therapist on the team. Everyone that is on the team has a bachelor's degree. It started out when I first got hired, everybody on the team was licensed. The company only hired licensed individuals because they wanted top tier people to provide top tier service. Of course, that changes as the services change. Let me say that intensive in-home, which is for the children population, everybody was a licensed therapist. Because if you start out in intensive in-home, let me give you a little background on that. I did that for 8 years. So intensive in-home is set up for the child has a therapist, the parent or guardian has a therapist and the whole family has a therapist. So that caseload is only 12 or 13 clients. But it's so intense. Every session is 2 hours. And so you meet them in their home because you're trying to build organization and a sense of safety, and the approach that you're going to take to try to figure out what's going on in the home with the child. Because chances are it's not really the child. They don't really want to face that. It's really the home, the environment, and the structure of it. Because how can your child be structured 8 hours at school and then come home and it's complete chaos? So a lot of times trying to get parents to understand that. And so intensive in-home, everybody has their own therapist, and then the whole family comes together after the child has had their individual session that week and the parent has had their individual session, and the whole family is going to have it. And so we're trying to tackle all points at one time. And so that's intensive in-home. And the only thing I can say about that, the crisis calls, because that's 24/7, that one is gonna, that is a difficult one to deal with. We're dealing with that in our company where a lot of the intensive in-home people are getting burned out, because right now it's just the crisis calls are very high, and those you normally have to go out to and figure out what's going on. With the adult population, it's pretty much like a phone call. My light's about to get cut off. Well, I wish you would have called me Monday through Friday because everything's closed. Get a candle and a flashlight. I don't know what that You have to think about ways to help them solve their problem.
What are some examples of crises that you would get a call about for intensive in-home?
Intensive in-home, little Jimmy is tearing the house up and breaking everything, and the family is scared. Those were mainly the calls that I got. So I'm supposed to come out there and say, Jimmy, stop. A lot of times that was difficult, and I was fresh into it. Now as an adult, I feel like, who's been in the game a lot, I probably could be a little bit better at it. But just for coming in fresh from getting a degree and trying to figure out, okay, how I'm gonna tell this little boy to stop. If he's gonna listen to his mama, what's gonna make him listen to me?
Right.
But that's mainly the calls that you get when it comes to the children, or they jumped out the car. So now I gotta figure out where y'all at. I had a teenager do that. Helicopters outside. What am I supposed to be doing? and you're just being there as a support. You're just like, okay, have we called the police? Do we know any other natural supports? Maybe let's have a break from each other. It's respite. Let's get them involved. Maybe everybody needs a timeout. You just come up with ways to try to figure out how to de-escalate the situation and make sure this family is not going to have per chaos.
So you being part of the community health psychology field. So I'm in the mix right now where I'm trying to find volunteer work.
Okay.
And since I am an online student too, and I know I heard you say earlier that you did volunteer work at a shelter, which I was it you or
No, it wasn't me.
Did I dream that up?
I'm
so sorry.
Ask your question. Maybe I still can answer.
But so my question is, for anyone, I guess, that's going into the field of psychology, and especially too when you're trying to look for a particular group of where you want to go with this before grad school, whatever level you decide to go into, what are the best places that you think, would work to kind of have a person to think, okay, if you do this type of, like going to a, I know like hospitals, but also doing shelters and other things like that, kind of give you an idea of like,
I see what you're saying. Yes. I feel like if you are doing any of the above, if you're going to a shelter, community mental health, intensive in-home, ACT services, if you can do that, you can do anything. I really say if you can work in ACT, I skipped that one because the stories alone, I didn't need to be a part of that. But I feel like if you want to try out starting early, doing community mental health, if you can do that, anything else is going to be a breeze.
Yes.
All your skills are going to be put to work.
Mhm.
Everything that you learn, and even the things that you read in a book, until you see it firsthand, you're like, oh my gosh, this is really what they were talking about. I read this.
Yeah.
Because to see someone really snap and turn on and off, or multiple personality, you don't really think it's real until you're there.
Mm-hmm.
And you're like, wow, it's fascinating to me. That's why I love it. But I think if you start out in those fields where it's it's high intensity, and you're probably going to have people that's unmedicated and really need help. If you start there, then everything else is going to be smooth sailing, whatever you decide to do after that. That's just, and I think you'll get the best of both worlds. You're going to get to really practice what you learned, and you're going to get some stuff that that they don't tell you in the book.
That's where I started, and before I got licensed, I was doing case management on a similar team for kids. It is often the training ground for new therapists,
Mm-hmm.
but it is great training, whether you decide to stay or you decide to move on. You will do a little bit of everything, and you just learn on, you just do
Get
it.
some cool stories.
Yeah,
Yeah,
right there.
just
We have
do
some
it.
wonderful stories to tell.
You'll have oversight and you'll have a lot more structure and supervision,
Right.
than
It's
to go
very
out.
collaborative, lots of
Yeah.
teammates.
That's true. Yeah.
Where do you work? What's the name of where you?
Carolina Outreach.
Okay, Carolina.
Carolina Outreach, and there's several of them. We only have one in Charlotte, but we have Durham, Raleigh, Smithfield. They're all over, but the one here is in Charlotte, and we're off of 301 McCullough, I think, down the street.
Oh yeah.
Oh, near
You've heard-
where we are.
University.
Yeah, uh-huh.
Yeah.
That's where our
And how
office
long
is.
have you been there, Christy?
Since 2018.
Okay. That's what I thought
2018.
you'd been there a while.
So then I started out in intensive in home, then COVID hit, thank God, and then I moved. I know it's hard to hear that. It really was, because that's how I got introduced into community support adult population. And working in different aspects, you'll realize what really isn't your forte. Working with kids is not mine. I can't do it. Adults is where I'm at, and I won't go back if I can't help it.
I'm sorry, because again, I'm piggybacking off what you're saying. So again, that's kind of where I'm at myself, where I kind of know where I'm at and like where I want to do, but I'm also having the hard time of just trying to a focus of where to volunteer to make, to know, okay, this is good for me. So I thank you for answering that question too, because again, it's like sometimes it is hard for us, especially for a lot of us, where the path you want to go, but you also don't know how and where to volunteer to see okay, is this for me or is it not for me?
I would say another thing too is when you're looking for your internship, look somewhere, or if you have to do your hours, somewhere that has a lot of different services. That way you can kind of get an aspect of different things and ask questions and get a feel for, maybe I should try this. That way you have a safety net. If that doesn't work, then I can go try over here to see if that works for me.
And funny you say that, because again, I know I said I don't want to work with kids because I know I would take that home with me, right? But then again, I think to myself, but how do I know that? If I don't know, if I haven't been in that environment, how do I know if I'm going to do that or not?
And that's one thing we tell our clients, right? You don't know until you try.
Yeah.
So I say give it a whirl. You never know if it really will work out for you. You might be excellent. Maybe you're the person that that family needs, and you're like, I didn't think I was going to be good at this, but obviously you are.
Right.
So try it out and see. That way you'll know for sure. Because I never want to be in a situation where I say, I wish I would have tried it to see if that would have been my go-to thing. I know I did it.
Yeah.
It's not my go-to. But I love working with the adult. I was scared. I'll be honest with you. I was scared to work with adults. Because these are grown people who can tell you to your face, you're terrible. And so I think we get an idea of how things can go, and because it's so unfamiliar and it's new to us, and we're trying to get honed in on what our thing is. Like I know my professor told me, Christy, you're solution focused. That's your thing. You just want to get straight to it. And half the time you want to help them. You want to tell them how to get there. She's like, slow down, let them figure it out.
Yeah.
And that's me. I just what we need to do, because I feel bad that you feel bad. So let's figure this. Let's figure it out. And I know that I'm a teacher, so I have to check myself a lot of times when I'm trying to save the person that's across from me. Like, we can eliminate all this talking if we just do this. But I have to let them get there,
Yeah,
right? So
I
you
get that.
find these things out as you're navigating your journey through this field.
I have a question, because I know you mentioned schizophrenia, so I have kind of like things I get curious about for a period of time and get really into it, and so I'm sort of trying to figure out if I just have an intellectual curiosity and want to research more to do with that kind of complex mental health, or what the day-to-day is like. So I guess I'm just curious, when you're working with like a schizophrenic client, like how does your day-to-day look, or how does, maybe it might be kind of a broad question because people are individuals, but I don't know how to like.
Okay, with CSC you have several. We have a bunch of them. Like you said, they're all different. So you really want to meet them where they are and then manage the symptoms, because this is something they're going to have the rest of their life, right? We just want to make sure that they're safe. And so you have some people who are
Psychotic
yes,
disorders.
who have word salad, just saying stuff. I have one young man, I try to have a conversation with him, and I can tell he's struggling with the voices in his head, and he can't get out the sentence what he's trying to say. So a lot of times he's like, it's not making sense. So I have to be patient and say, okay, so what are we focusing on right now? What is it that you need? And then we're trying to work on him getting that out. But also, he is not, the bottle of medication I just found out he had was from last year. So you haven't been taking your medicine. But he's been homeless since age 28, and he's 35, and he just got his own apartment last week. So it starts from scratch. I just learned that I don't even think he knows how to do daily living tasks. So these are conversations with people, but he has things going on up here. So the first thing I now need to prioritize is getting him to a psychiatrist, at least having a conversation. The minute you talk about medication and they think you're forcing that on them, no. Can we just be open to have a conversation, sitting down talking about what it looks like, what different medications are out there, what does it do to your body? Because right now you're struggling. You can't even have a coherent thought because of what's going on up here. And because you can't have a coherent thought, you can't make decisions. It's hard for him just trying to shop for the man. What is it that you like? Can't give me an answer. He doesn't know. And so it's different. Then we have another guy. I have to tell him to calm down when he's having a conversation because he's so aggressive and angry. Anytime we go out, all I can say is, hey, how you doing? And the minute he opens his mouth, it's aggression. And so it's different things you have to really figure out what's going on and tap into what works. For some reason, I'm the only person that can get him to calm down. So a lot of times the staff's like, let's call Miss Christie. Let's see what it is. Maybe she can get what it is how I can help you today. And so it's different.
Okay, so who do you, like, since you work with people with different kind of like degrees or skills, who do you feel like is on average like the most effective helper for that population? Or is it
Me, as far as on the team?
Yeah, like if you were
The
going
peer
to go
support.
into that,
The peer support specialist.
Okay.
For some reason, they connect the most with them. So a peer support specialist, for those of you who may not know, is someone, peer is the key word in there. It's someone who has been through some struggles, have been able to overcome it, has got certification, has certain skills, a workbook. They have these things put in place to connect with the population. So a lot of, when I come showing up, where's the peer support? I haven't talked to him this week. I had one man, I said, you can't call him every day. Like, can I help you today? Is there something I can do? So the peer support specialist in community support is the main person. The second would probably be the QP. So that's a qualified professional. They help them get resources in the community. So anytime there's food, my light bill, I can't pay my rent, I need a crisis referral, so they can help me that's the other person. Third will probably be me, because they see me as the person in charge. And so if nobody else is listening or doing what they say, then they call me. They're not doing what they what I asked them to do. And so then I have to figure out how to get everybody to calm down.
So, you're not doing kind of the sit down face-to-face
No.
therapy. It's a lot of these like hierarchy of needs,
Yes.
shelter, clothing, food,
Stabilization.
stabilization.
That is very true.
Yeah.
Thank you for pointing that out.
Mhm.
So I noticed in doing this for a long time, when I actually had to sit down last year when I said, okay, I'm gonna start and do some outpatient, I realized it was very hard for me because I hadn't done it in so long to sit down and talk to someone. So a lot of times the first 6 months when they're coming in CST services, it's about hierarchy needs. What is a priority? After we've managed to get them housed, getting their needs met, trying to get them financially stable, then I'm going to sit down and say, guess what? It's time for you to start talking to me or the substance abuse specialist. So what that looks like, our sessions are probably 45 minutes because they can't sit that long to talk. So it's a 45-minute session wherever they feel comfortable. It's either me coming to them or them coming to the office or doing virtual. And we're sitting down talking because half of them have never had a therapy session in their lives, so they don't know what that looks like. They're so used to just going to somebody, get me what I need. No, let's talk about what's deeper than that. How did you become homeless? There's a reason why you got there. We don't want you to go back. So let's talk about how to prevent that. What are some things? You come find out there was a lot of childhood trauma. A lot of things that we're dealing with in CST comes from childhood trauma. I'm a firm believer that who we are as adults stem from your childhood. Yes, we encounter things as adults, but when you've dealt with things as a child and have not got the proper treatment, that turns into the adult version.
Sorry, I want you to keep going what you're saying, but no, it's funny that you even said this because again, I'm gonna go back to one of my classes. So the class that I have currently right now, what you're saying is so true, but also too, there's another aspect about that with homelessness, especially with people that are going through mental health, like for prison per se, where you have a lot of people that are prisoners but have mental health and don't know how to operate with that.
Yeah.
And so in one of the courses that we had to do was where we had to put like an intervention where if I was in your case, right, and where you're working with a person and let's say they've been incarcerated let's say 3 times, and then you're working with them to say, okay, like, why are you keep getting incarcerated? Like, we know you have this, but why is that? And then again, it goes back to the childhood trauma where maybe that person was traumatized so much that they didn't know how to go about it because during whatever time that was, a lot of it was taboo where a lot of people didn't talk about that in their homes and stuff. And so I was just wondering, have you ever had that happen where you had someone that maybe was sorry, this train of thought went out the window, but
that was incarcerated and he came into services?
right.
That's funny. I just talked with the young lady, her supports today. She got out December last year. Haven't seen her yet. So with Alliance, she's saying she doesn't know who her community support team is. No one's helping her. We've documented calls, attempts, tried to meet she had 3 appointments this week. She didn't show up for none of them. But Alliance sent me a message today saying that she's wanting to get services and doesn't understand why no one's helping her.
Oh wow.
When you're dealing with systematic stuff and childhood, so you already had trauma growing up, then you get into a system that's going to cause more trauma, and now you're coming out into the environment where everything is different. I think she was in jail for 7 or 8 years. So this environment for her is scary. The world is totally different now. We're much fast paced, and she doesn't know how to cope. She needs somewhere to stay. She's trying to maintain employment. Then she's scared about, I have a felony. Who's going to give me a place to stay?
Right.
Or a job.
Right.
Yeah.
And so she said, okay. And so she's saying, I have this job. I can't stop to show up for you guys because I don't want to lose it. I understand that. So we have been trying to meet you after work. I've even tried to say I'll meet you at 8 o'clock in the morning, which I don't do for anybody.
Yeah.
And nothing is working. So how invested is she in this? She might not be in a place when if I take you back to substance stage of change, I think that's where I'm trying to go. Where are you with your idea of wanting to change?
Yeah.
Right? Are you in contemplation? We have to meet people where they are. So I'm not going to force something if you're not ready. You can come back later. We'll still be here. And so it's just about making sure you navigate who you are as a clinician and a provider. Also with the person sitting across from you who might not even understand what a compass is or where they're going. Right? So just if you're wanting to continue into this field and maybe come to the counseling side, it's just about making sure that you're empathetic, sympathetic, understanding, doing the work within yourself first so you can see what that looks like before you try to help somebody else. So hopefully you guys, I was helpful.
No, you're great.
Nice to meet you guys. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Christy.
You have a
We
business
want
card?
to get